Hello and welcome to The Toughest Choice. I'm Stephanie Reynolds. I am delighted to have Leif Embertson with me today, who is the president of Natural Systems Design. He's been the president since 2020 and joined that organization in 2012. Prior to that, he was with AIRS as a water resource engineer, AIRS Associates, and has also got civil engineering background. And so he brings a lot of years, looks like over 20 years of experience in that space and with a lot of engineering expertise. And I just want to welcome you here to be on the show, Leif. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you. So can you help us understand about natural systems design and what the focus of the organization is?
Yeah, well, we're a company of about 55 people now, all with the intention of creating a big positive impact on the environment and the communities kind of we live and work around. Our work really focuses on river, stream, wetland, coastal, and forest restoration across the Northwest, with a big emphasis on salmon recovery and flood protection. So we have a bunch of what I call ologists. We have a lot of scientists that work for us that help us figure out both how a system is currently functioning, what it needs to be functioning better, and then engineers that then help take that idea and put it into action and get some projects built.
Fantastic. That's a big scope. What might be a typical project? Like, where do you touch? Can you give us some examples of work that you've done in the Northwest?
Yeah, I mean, we really work from kind of the headwaters down to the ocean, and even just recently started doing a lot more coastal and nearshore work. But we've worked a lot in the Olympic Peninsula on rivers like the Elwha and Ho, Queets and Quinault. We've worked a lot in Puget Sound, the Skagit and the Nooksack drainage, and Thornton Creek down in Seattle, South Prairie Creek, the Puyallup River system, and also a lot in the Upper Columbia rivers like the Wenatchee and Eniat
Wow.
areas over there also. And but our work's really taken us kind of all over the U.S., but we do have a focus here in the Northwest. So probably the bulk of our work is here in Washington and on the edges of Washington. But yeah, we've been involved in work in the Midwest and the East Coast and Hawaii and even Northern California. As we've grown, I don't know if exactly we have a typical project anymore, but maybe historically, at least with salmon recovery in the Northwest, a lot of work is focused in around putting wood back in our rivers and streams in a stable way that helps create kind of dynamics that salmon have evolved to thrive in. So a lot of our work involves kind of designing and then helping construct what we call engineered log jams in rivers across the Northwest. But it's really much broader than that also. We're starting to work in areas where our projects are helping store water naturally by increasing kind of groundwater connection. That also helps fish, but also helps communities and water supply issues. We're also working kind of in the nearshore area and helping restore kind of Puget Sound's coastline. So usually what happens on a project is we'll work with a government nonprofit type entity. They have an idea for a project and they'll contract with us to both kind of refine the idea, better understand what's going on, and then help implement kind of an idea to improve that particular area and process.
Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, so let's pivot to you and your role currently there. You've been in that seat now for 5.5 years, yeah, or more. Can you give us an idea of your role, what president means at Natural Systems Design?
So yeah, I took over as president in 2020. The roles really evolved over the years. We intentionally try to be like a very flat organization with limited hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
but decisions do need to get made and someone needs to be tracking kind of where the business is going. and helping make sure we have an alignment with our team, of what that looks like. So right now, I'm primarily operations focused. I kind of work in maybe three different areas. One like strategic planning for the organization, two, kind of financial tracking, reporting, management of how we're doing as a business. And then I also am kind of serving as an interim sort of business development and marketing director role where I'm
Wow.
tracking the marketplace a little bit more and helping write proposals and respond to kind of direct RFPs and RFQs that clients might be putting out. So yeah, it's a pretty fun role. I really enjoy it. It takes a lot, but yeah, it's been something I've really grown to like.
Well, and I've had the good fortune of knowing you since early in your tenure as the president, and I've really seen a tremendous progression. Let's talk about your evolution and also, I think, your leadership philosophy, because you mentioned that you're, head of strategic planning, or maybe not your words, but you've taken kind of the lead there, and then also with sales and marketing. At the same time, you are kind of holding the organization the whole organization too. Curious if you could characterize your leadership philosophy at this point. How would you talk about that?
To me, leadership's really about creating conditions for others to really thrive.
Hmm.
I think it's about setting the direction, but also listening and trying to remove obstacles, helping make sure people feel seen and heard and supported. I see my job as trying to keep us aligned in what we say our purpose is and really holding that long view, making sure we're grounded in what matters along the way. And a lot of that is our people, the quality of our work and the impact we want to have. I think consistency matters a lot. Trust matters. Humility really matters. I don't think a leader needs to have all the answers, but you really need to show up and be accountable and really like grow. I think in the growth realm, you need to have the ability to really like personally grow and stretch yourself to be effective.
Beautifully said. Why, one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I think when you just opened that with saying that the main job is clearing obstacles so others can thrive and do their best work or something like that, that is such a huge part of integrity in leadership and one of the most essential aspects of what a great leader ends up looking like. I'm curious about how you would characterize what a leadership success example for you might have been.
I mean, I think just stepping into the role for me was kind of a big success. I didn't really ever anticipate, or I don't know, like having a leadership role was never like a set goal for me. But
Mm,
I came into my role at a big kind of internal transition point for the organization and the onset of the COVID pandemic.
yeah.
So there was a whole lot going on, and the stakes were, I don't know, frankly, kind of high at the time. People were anxious, feeling stretched pretty thin. The whole world was kind of in flux. And yeah, that was kind of day one.
You got the hot seat.
Yeah, taking on the role. And yeah, there's a whole lot to figure out in a real short time frame I didn't have maybe the runway I thought I might have and kind of sitting in this seat. I think, like more of a tactical accomplishment along the way is really working to guide the company through its first strategic planning effort. I think we started that in like 2022. So we were just kind of coming out of all that uncertainty. And there are a lot of, really strong, diverse viewpoints about, who the company was and where we're going and how should we get there. And I thought, really felt like my role is to help one create the direction of like, hey, we really need to have these conversations and get clarity on, these really important matters to the company. And then from that, really listen to what the diversity of those perspectives, try to synthesize all that into a coherent path forward. And it definitely wasn't easy, but it was also really fun, to kind of work through that whole process. And at the end did require a lot of tough prioritization, but I think in the end, it was one of the better things the company's done, maybe in my entire tenure here, is help create that clarity of like, this is where we're going, this is how we want to do it, and these are the things that matter most. And it's really served as a sort of like a guidepost, as we have more tactical day-to-day decisions, we can really kind of put those up against the strategic plan and say, is this in line with this or is this not? And if it's not, well, then it's an easier thing to let go of and focus in on the things that we really want to do.
I just want to underline, I hear so often from clients, whether they're in top leadership roles or some kind of role, that the lack of clarity, like you are articulating, the lack of clarity of the direction and the vision and the plan that goes along with it is very hard for people. And so, even though it took a lot of work, a lot of patience, it sounds like, and collaboration and hard decision making, the reward that you're speaking to makes total sense. It's so hard to have the rigor to truly do that and live by it. So I'm really glad to hear that that has been, because it's been a while. It's not like you just got finished last week.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah,
about
for sure.
3 years. So that sounds really important, really like a true success. It's like a guidepost, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really helped kind of foster the success since then and brought a lot more reward and purpose back to the whole company by kind of having that guidepost. One, it was a super inclusive effort. Anyone in the company could participate in the effort and their voice could get heard if they wanted it to. And two, it provides that clarity for everyone of like, this is where we're going. So I think it's really helped serve as like a foundation.
That's great. Pivoting then to what you might characterize as not as successful or unsuccessful, because I ask this question because leaders that will be listening in never, love to talk about those, but without going through them and learning from them, we're not really in the seat because there's no way you can make all the right calls.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, I say on a good day, I'm hoping to make 80% of the decisions in a good way and then ask for grace for the other 20%.
Right,
Um,
right.
I think if you're batting around that average, you're doing pretty phenomenally. Probably the moments where I've waited a little too long to act around like a personnel issue or a project or client dynamic that really needed intervention. I personally, one, those things are just hard things to work through. People are inclined to kind of push it down the road a little bit. I also tend to try to give people a lot of space, in how they do their work and trust. I think, which is really good until it's not. And so I think learning to intervene earlier with compassion, but also accountability has been a big growth area for me. I think there have been moments where I've taken on a lot too much, like taken on too much personally, where, kind of, I have a very sort of like get it done sort of mentality. And sometimes I feel like that's made me less effective in a long term sense, or at least kind of broken some eggs along the way. And I've tried to learn to step back a little bit and delegate and trust, all the great people around me. But that's an ongoing sort of daily practice.
Hmm. I can't tell you how many leaders, the way you answered in both ways, the way you answered this question, I can't tell you how many leaders answer in that similar vein. That doesn't mean you're all alike or anything like that. It's just that hesitating a little too long and erring on the side of giving people room, which is necessary for their own development, growth, and productivity, but yet hesitating to make the call sooner. And the difficulty that goes along with that has come up so many times, along with because you're in the role you're in, is particular in your type of organization, you have a tremendous amount of experience in doing the work. And that was probably one of the things you were most drawn to in your life. And so it's harder to pull away and delegate when you know you could do it a little faster, a little bit easier, maybe better, maybe not, but your way. You're in good company. And so for any leaders out there hearing this, I could feel them nodding because it's a very common feeling, and you don't want to be premature. You want to do the right thing and give things time to cure. But then there are those limitations of time and resource that get in the way, right, in any business. And the reason I call this podcast The Toughest Choice is because this being in leadership requires a lot of those. It requires doing the right thing in the face of pressure, and pressure shows up for people in different ways. I'm so curious what might have bubbled up for you as you thought about some of the toughest choices you've had to make since you've been in the role.
One of the tougher things I've had to do is, letting go of someone who is really a great person, but probably not the right fit for the team or the organization anymore. And that definitely took a lot out of me. I think I got a lot of gray hairs and a lot less hair in some places kind of through that process. But in the end, it was really the right decision for the team and honestly for the person too. I think it's just a reminder that, yeah, leadership isn't really always about keeping people comfortable. You have to make the tough choices. And, hopefully through that, you're aligning with your values and your purpose and kind of the long term health of the organization. I think it helped me sharpen to like the culture I wanted to try to build at NSD. And that's definitely supportive, but it's also has accountability in there and is honest, through the process. And one of the other sort of just toughest choices, like in a theme, is really just you got to work to be okay that not every decision is going to make everyone happy. And that's part of like leadership and learning how to like sit in that discomfort while kind of staying true to those sort of purpose, mission, values that's tough. One of the most important things the leader can do for an organization is, get the right people in the right seats on the bus. And those are tough decisions. They're not always ones that both a particular person agrees with and or even the team. And you still need to be okay with that as yeah, everyone's got their strengths. And I think a goal with being in a leadership seat is understanding what those strengths are and what the organization needs and trying to best fit kind of those two in the Venn diagram.
Such a balancing act, too. Underlying, what you shared, the exiting someone that was very difficult and the risks that come with that, especially to the point you raised after that about like people not being happy with you, not being happy with that decision, not even agreeing necessarily with the decision. That risk of having people unhappy with us, for some people, they cannot stomach it. They just can't. Others, they're more impervious and they just go on like a steamroller and don't pay attention to how people feel at all. And we want to err to the side of paying attention and listening and being connected, but at the same time, like you said, being willing to be comfortable with the discomfort that comes with it. It is a lonely job sometimes.
Yeah, and it definitely can be.
It can be because you're unique in what you can see, and you have more information on, maybe not at the project level every minute, but you have more information about the broader enterprise and the experiences you've had to be able to make these harder decisions. So what did you tell yourself when you took those risks that got you through?
I have a little bit of, I don't know, like a mantra and definitely like some Zen Buddhism sort of philosophy of everything's ultimately going to kind of work out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helped me through the years. You might not see the path, but ultimately everything works out as it needs to. Years ago, I actually got it tattooed on my arm. The mantra is like see, feel, trust. The idea is to kind of see, visualize, the ideal outcome, feel what it might feel like for that outcome to happen, and then really just trust that, the right things will come into place. That's kind of a daily sort of practice, sort of mantra for me in all sorts of different aspects of life.
That's powerful. It's very powerful sounds like it's your value system as well.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
kind of your foundation. Whatever practice it comes from,
Mm.
it's knowing you're doing your best and allow yourself to be present. I love the see and feel. You want to visualize the future. You want to feel where things are and what it would feel like potentially to be there, and then trust that things will happen as they need to. And you, again, even if it comes in a different form, there's a characteristic of great leaders that are willing to do their best and take the risk and be present with what then follows, not just absolving themselves of any responsibilities, which you're not saying at all. But there is something about trusting. Yeah, trusting that things will work out. Thank you. I appreciate that depth of sharing. And so, as we pivot now, we're in such unusual times. What do you think leaders need today to kind of take with them?
I think they need a lot of courage. There's definitely been some days where it's like, I don't really want to get out of bed and go to work today. But you do it because you know it needs to get done. There's a whole lot of complexity out there. And I think a little bit of it's courage not to default into controlling. I think that's humans' kind of natural instinct as this uncertainty builds. You look to control things more if you're attached to a particular outcome. But I think also courage to stay open and humble, willing to evolve, working to provide that clarity we kind of talked about, courage to treat people right as you're kind of navigating all the things. I also really think it's important for leaders to be able to hold, paradox, which is essentially, right, like two conflicting viewpoints where, you need to be steady and flexible, ambitious, and grounded, visionary, but also just human. And yeah, I think that skill set is really important for leaders today. I think when you start to see things in black and white, you tend towards that control, trending away from kind of the characteristics I think people really need.
Well said. Great lessons. You seem like your internal process really is mirrored by your external process in what you're suggesting. And I think that what I've noticed, and I think you're echoing it, in these large organizations, people want collaboration, transparency, and trust and authenticity, even if it means bad news. And that keeps coming up in so many polls and so many discussions, and that there's a yearning for that truthfulness, the integrity, and the authenticity. And I think what you've illustrated here and what I know of you, you just illustrated kind of how to put it into action. Thank you for being willing to take time out of your schedule and for being willing to share your journey a little bit with us.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to.
Thank you for listening. To hear more conversations with leaders, please subscribe to The Toughest Choice wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates, please connect with me on LinkedIn. This is Stephanie Reynolds. Thanks for listening.